Hey, thanks for coming out. I'm Dania, and I chair the board of Political Research Associates, and I'm thrilled to be the person to introduce PRA fellow Spencer Sunshine. PRA is Political Research Associates, and I'm going to explain what that is in just a second. I am, among other things, a third-generation New Yorker, and also a third-generation lefty, and I know while that right is ascended in new and exciting and horrifying ways that we're going to learn about from Spencer, in many ways, their existence here in our little blue bubble of the People's Republic of Brooklyn is not really very new at all. PRA is also not new. Since 1981, we've been researching and analyzing the right, white nationalists and dominionists and militias, oh my, but also kind of more run-of-the-mill folks, everyone from neoliberals to neo-Nazis, privatizers to patriots to Proud Boys. Here's the pitch. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our quarterly magazine, free samples of which are here on this table, and join us in challenging the right, advancing justice, and learning from courageous and brilliant thinkers like Spencer Sunshine.
Is the cable tight?
Wow, I broke it.
I'll be broadcast live as well on Facebook, so I'm not sure. And so it is being broadcast live, and we will take questions at the end, but you're not visible to the camera, and I will repeat the questions, so in case you're not comfortable with that. But thank you all for coming out here to Verso Books, and thank you to Verso Books for having me hosting this talk. And we're going to discuss, this is something that's not ever, as far as I know, discussed, is about what far-right activism here in New York City looks like. I don't think I've lived here 17 years, I don't think I've ever seen a talk or seen an article on this. There's articles about specific incidents, which I'll refer to, that are sort of upwellings from the far-right underground here in New York coming to the surface, and you'll see them in the news, but I don't think anyone's actually had a talk about it, so we'll change that right now. So we're at an interesting time in the United States with Trump in power and there being a resurgent far right. We now have over a half dozen explicitly fascist and white nationalist groups here in New York City, and that doesn't include the dozens of other kinds of far right groups that are here that are less than explicitly white nationalist. We've seen conglomeration of these groups take to the streets recently at 2 Islamic rallies in Manhattan. The first one was on May 25th. It was a rally against Muslim feminist Linda Sarsour when she was speaking at the commencement ceremony for the CUNY School of Public Health. And then the second one, so if I talk about the Sarsour rally, it's this one. And then the second one was on June 10th. There was an anti-Sharia law rally at Foley Square, which was the local event for a day of national events, sponsored by the Islamophobic group Act for America. It brought almost all of these groups that I'm going to be talking about together out into the streets and have them all working together for this. So these are the biggest far-right demonstrations that I've seen in New York. And this appearance on the streets, I believe, is a direct effect of the influence of Donald Trump. So if you're here in this space, I'm sure you're aware that there's in general a rise in far-right activity in the United States. But I think too often people, especially on the left, look at the far right just as like one big black box. It's just like, those are the far right. Or even sometimes when people say fascists, I mean, they really mean a huge range of people, and I think people even understand that Nazis and militias aren't all the same thing, but people just say this as if it's one thing, It's completely undifferentiated, and they don't see the same kind of color and texture and variation that we would see in our own political movements, where you're like, where people make these tiny little distinctions. So I think this is a mistake for people on the left to look at the far right this way, and one of the things that I do want people to take away from this talk is to start looking at the different factions and organizers in the far right in a more complex light. So when you see the shades of gray in their beliefs and their alliances and in their organizing strategies, and I think this is a necessary first step if people are going to take action against these groups. People also need to pay closer attention to what's happening here in New York City and not think this is something that's just going on in some other part of the country. So, I think right now we're seeing the biggest rise in far-right activism in the United States since racist currents were flourishing in the mid-1980s to mid-1990s. When Trump started his presidential campaign, he energized racists with his promise to build a wall on the Mexican border and to register Muslims. In return, the organized white supremacist movement eagerly grabbed onto his coattails, and he acknowledged their support in his tweets, and then ultimately appointed Steve Bannon as an advisor. And on one hand, there's a small number of people who are in these specifically self-consciously organized racist groups, but there's a much larger group of people with millions of people that we might call right-wing populists. And these include Islamophobes and militia members and other kinds of politics. And this is important because we're starting to see, or we've been seeing a collaboration between these groups in a much closer way than has been the case in the past. So I'm going to base this loosely on how former PRA senior analyst Chip Relay and Matthew Lyons used the concept of right-wing populism in their book, which is Right-Wing Populism in America. I'm using it in a bit of a different way, but they use it. They like to exclude explicit white nationalists from their definition because they want to show how mainstream conservatives and white nationalists often are using the same basic framework. But because I want people to think about organizing circles, I'm going to use them differently and break the two apart. So we'll have right-wing populists on one hand, and once people have fallen into an explicit white nationalism, I'll refer to it separately for this talk. So right-wing populists are people who are not neoliberals or business conservatives. They espouse a kind of faux radical anti-elitism. And their basic narrative is that the people are under attack by elites from above and by subversives and parasites from below. So a common example that probably everybody's heard, hardworking members of the nation are under attack from the liberal elites and the East Coast bankers, while welfare cheats steal their taxes and Muslims try to impose Sharia law. So basically like everybody in New York, right? So, this is a classic narrative. We've all heard it. It's based on resentment towards others, and there's a sensibility of always being the victim, even and maybe especially when the groups in question are the most privileged groups that exist in a society. So right-wing populists might include Islamophobes, and the Southern Poverty Law Center says there's been a 200% increase in Islamophobic groups in the last year, from 15 to 16. The conspiracy theory milieu, which we often infects the left as well. The Christian right, anti-LGBTQ groups, anti-immigrant groups, economic nationalists who are opposed to free trade, anti-Semites, believers in the conspiracy theory-driven style of libertarian economics, like Ron Paul, the patriot movement and the militias, and more recently the men's rights movement, which we've seen a big influence on the alt-right. So, right-wing populists are here, white nationalists are here, further to the right. They're people who explicitly advocate for white social, economic, and political power, that often claim that white people are oppressed as a group. And they have a variety of different tactical approaches. Some of them use the regular political channels and run for office. There's a political party I'll talk about. Some of them are racial separatists. They want to break the U.S. up and have a separate white ethno-state. This is Richard Spencer's position. And then some of them are supremacists, and they want to enslave, expel, or exterminate people of color, and usually Jews. So of white nationalists, they also are broken up, and so fascists are a subset of white nationalists. You get white nationalists who aren't fascists. The Ku Klux Klan, was established in the 1860s, 1870s before, the fascist movements arose, and then revived in 1915. And the Nazis are only one kind of fascist, so they're like resting dolls that are subsets of each other. In the past, there was a taboo against mainstream conservatives collaborating with white nationalists, and merely outing them if they were part of a political campaign was enough to shame conservatives into breaking links with them. But Trump has seriously weakened this taboo, and we're seeing a lot of collaboration than we've seen in the past. So, what does the white nationalist movement look like in the United States and New York City? And I'm going to describe to you 10 different kinds of white nationalists you might meet, and I will tell you which ones you may meet in New York City because they are organizing here. So the first, everyone's familiar with the Ku Klux Klan. People often think this is a national organization, but that has not been the case since the 1940s. SPLC says that they have about 130 groups right now, and 2 of them are on Long Island. So Christian identity is another sort of subset of the white nationalist movement. It's an explicitly racist version of Christianity. It's vehemently anti-Semitic. There are, depending on whose numbers you look at, between 20 and 100 groups today. They were very influential on the older racist movement from the 70s to the 90s. A lot of the groups had the Christian identity members. It sort of faded, but I think they're existing as a kind of reserve pool, and like it could come back. That they're quiet, but they haven't gone away. There are racist prison gangs. There was a big revival of them a few years ago. The change is now they're both inside and outside of the prisons. This is dangerous because they're very heavily armed, often involved in drug dealing. The good thing is that they're not so political, so they tend not to get involved in some of the political fights. The biggest gang that people may have heard of is the Aryan Brotherhood. There are neo-Nazi political parties. There's several of them. The biggest is the National Socialist movement. If you ever see pictures in the U.S. in the last year or two of a big rally outside, and people have these swastika flags, often they're sort of like a mix of an American flag and a swastika flag. That's the NSM. Although recently they were trying to mainstream and they took the swastika off their flag and they now have a pagan rune on it. Still have Nazi skinheads. They don't seem to ever go away. For a minute, all of the main groups had collapsed except the Hammerskins, but the groups have bounced back, and now there are several active ones. Here in New York City, we have Firm 22, which is a group that's connected to the Villanders, and there's a Blood and Honor group here. Neo-Confederates are having a growth spurt. These are people who want the southern states that made up the Confederacy to secede. I'd like to, right here, offer a new slogan for the moment, for this movement. If at first you don't secede, try and try again. And they're trying. The biggest group is the League of the South, and they'll show up to all right rallies that happen in the South, especially to the ones to defend Confederate memorials. There's a more general pool of white nationalist groups that don't have a very specific orientation. One of the most famous leaders in this, of this type is David Duke. He's a former Klan leader. He was elected to the Louisiana State House in 1989. He ran again for office last year, saying that Trump had inspired him to do this. Didn't do very well though in the elections. There's also projects like American Renaissance. It's a periodical and a conference, and it's one of the background intellectual influences on the alt-right. The alt-right hasn't really come up with a lot of new white supremacist ideas. They've largely taken ones from people, and so this is one of the sources for it. Here in New York City, we have a group one of the locals of the council. SPLC says we have a local, the Council for Conservative Citizens. It's the successor group to the segregationist era white citizens councils. And we also have a branch of the American Freedom Party. This is the largest white nationalist electoral vehicle. If you heard about this Trump delegate to the convention who was a Nazi, he was actually the party head of the American Freedom Party, William Johnson. If you look at their East Coast office's mailing address, it's on the Upper West Side at 106th and Broadway. So I want to talk about one of my favorite things is unorthodox fascists. I'm writing a book about this. They are a variety of different political strains and their groups may include both white people and people of color, but they promote white separatism. They are often strongly reliant on anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, although they usually name Zionists instead of Jews as the agent of the global conspiracy. Some examples of this might include the National Anarchists. Keith Preston's group, Attack the System. and New Resistance. Related to this, kind of in this pool, is a Florida-based libertarian Satanist. He's actually a Thelemite named Augustus Invictus, and he is causing a lot of problems in the Libertarian Party, and he comes to New York sometimes and speaks here and works with people here in New York. We also have active neo-reactionaries. You might have read about them in the tech press. They're these kinds of authoritarian technocrats that have been influenced by some fascist thinkers. They come out of Nick Land's work. If you know about accelerationism, there's two branches of Land's work. The left-wing branch is accelerationism, and the right-wing branch is neo-reaction. The neo-reactionaries were apparently recruiting the students up at Columbia University last year. And this has also caused a lot of problems here in New York. There's a number of neo-folk and black metal musicians, as well as people in the pagan and esoteric mystical scene who have gotten involved in various volkish and anti-modernist forms of white separatism. And if you want to ask about this in Q&A, you can. There's a number of individual musicians and promoters and stuff here who are involved in these circles. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the National Anarchists. They're one of my favorite fascist groups. Those of us who watch the far right, we have like little pet groups that we get really fascinated by. So this is a crypto-fascist group. It was created by a longtime British fascist who was an activist originally in the National Front. They claim that they're anarchists because they want everybody to live in separate racial villages. But as we like to say, national anarchism is to anarchism what national socialism is to socialism. So national anarchists are against neoliberal global capitalism, but then they explain it with these conspiracy theories about a Zionist cabal and the Bilderbergs and stuff. One of the first things they did after Seattle was to try to loop people from the anti-globalization movement into having a demonstration against the Bilderberg Conference. And it's almost a classic example of how conspiracy theories work to divert people from real, tangible problems. We have a local branch of this group called the NATA, the National Anarchist Tribal Alliance New York. They are special snowflakes in a field of snowflakes. They're a multiracial group who say it's a personal choice to either be a white separatist or be in a multiracial community, although they're still anti-Semites and Holocaust deniers. So this is important because it represents a much more widespread shift on the far right. And I think this is new. It's where white separatism is not a requirement for groups, but it's an acceptable option. And collaborating with white separatists is seen as completely fine. And so this is becoming normalized, I think, in a larger group of people where you don't have to be a white separatist. It used to be like you were white power or you weren't, or you may be a sympathizer. Now it's just like, oh yeah, you can be white power, but you don't have to be. So they kind of represent that to me. So, they always said they're anarchists. Now the local here has endorsed Trump, because of course they have. And you can see their flag at the Trump demonstrations. It's a black flag with a white star. It says NAM on it, even though they've been expelled from NAM for supporting Trump. That's the parent group. Anyway, they work with the Rock Against Communism skinheads, who are a parallel unorthodox movement that is strong here in New York, and I will describe that in a bit. So, let's talk about the alt-right. The alt-right has fairly traditional white supremacist beliefs, but they rebranded themselves. They don't look like Nazi skinheads, Klan members, or old white men in badly fitted suits. Richard Spencer, of course, is a younger man in a, well-fitting suit. That there summarizes the main difference. Some of this reconfiguration comes out of things that were going on in this unorthodox fascist milieu in the late O's and early teens, where groups were sort of refiguring what they were doing and refiguring their approach. The alt-right itself is really Janus-based. One part of it puts on real intellectual airs, and the other part are these really crude trolls. So on one hand, they'll start having these discourses about Julius Evola and Heidegger, and on the other hand, they're sending memes out like, I'm going to shove you into an oven, right? It's kind of weird. It goes on at the same time. So I'll go through some of the most important groups, and we'll go from the most Nazi of them to the least Nazi of them. So Andrew Anglin, who runs the Daily Stormer website, is the most neo-Nazi of the alt-right people. Daily Stormer has eclipsed Stormfront as the most popular racist website in America, and he now has, SPLC says they now have 30 on-the-ground groups in the United States, and one of them is here in New York City. There are two alt-right groups that focus on recruiting at universities. They're Identity Europa and Vanguard America. Both of them are active here in New York City and have appeared at the May Day and Foley Square rallies. And I went to eat at this Ethiopian restaurant last week in Bushwick, and one of the stickers of Identity Europa was in the bathroom. I had to tear it down and tell the restaurant. So people here, I'm sure, are familiar with Richard Spencer. He runs a think tank called the National Policy Institute and a new website, that's altright.com. The most intellectual wing of the alt-right is the website Countercurrents. Don't confuse it, there's a lefty Countercurrents website too. And a book press called Arctos. And these people are active here in New York. In May 2016 was the first meeting of something called the New York Forum. These are these secret racist meetings where speakers come, they're invite only. And it's run by Countercurrents members. In addition to this, the editor of Arctos Press, Jason Giorgiani, lives here in New York City, and he teaches at the New Jersey Institute of Technology. He helps run altright.com with Richard Spencer. Now, the catch here about Giorgiani is that he's of Iranian descent, but the white racists seem to be okay with this because they have this whole Indo-Aryan mythology that the Nazis were into. So, here's the Traditionalist Worker Party. They're kind of a precursor and a participant in the alt-right. They lean more towards neo-Nazism than the other groups. They're based in Indiana. Their leader, Matthew Heimbach, has come to New York. There's pictures of him meeting with the leadership of Golden Dawn, or an MP from Golden Dawn, the Greek neo-Nazi party, and there's reason to believe that they have a local group here. Last year, around this time, they announced they were going to hold a big rally here in New York against the United Nations, but they changed their mind and went to Tennessee or something else. A guy named Mike Enoch lives here. He runs a major alt-right podcast platform called The Right Stuff. In January, he was doxxed as living on the Upper East Side with his Jewish wife. Consistency is not the far-right's strongest suit. He also has people who are up, so one of his people who works with him is named Sven. He lives upstate of Fishkill. It's a little town outside of Beacon. I'm going to talk about the alt-right. The alt-right are conservatives who are into the aggressive, narcissistic, and misogynistic form and style of the alt-right, but they're not explicitly white supremacist. They're often not into the overt anti-Semitism, and they're generally more LGBTQ accepting, although Richard Spencer is accepting of LGBTQ people. But a lot of people talk about this division. The alt-right people are always like, we're not alt-right, we're alt-right. But when you look at their statements and who they're working with, there's no way you can really draw a clear line between the two movements. I mean, they're definitely poles, but there's not a clean break, other than the fact that people of color, gay men, and Jews can participate fully in the alt-right. That's true. But you'll constantly see the major figures like Laura Southern, Baked Alaska, and Kyle Chapman, Stick-Based Man, all of whom supposedly don't belong to the white supremacist faction, express openly racist and anti-Semitic ideas, and occasionally make direct alliances with these factions. So Laura Southern was the woman who came to the Foley Square rally, who tried to come into the noise demonstration, and people allegedly threw fox piss on her. She is like, I'm not alt-right, I'm alt-light, but she had just come back from France, where she took pictures with Generation Identity, a French white supremacist group, and was arrested for trying to join a blockade of refugee boats coming to France. I'm going to talk a bit about another New Yorker, Gavin McInnes, and his group, the Proud Boys. I'm going to talk about him for a little bit. He lives in New York, and he's important because he lives here and he tries to separate himself from the white nationalism. He leads a national group called the Proud Boys, who come to all of the New York demonstrations. He is the co-founder of Vice magazine, although he left the magazine in 2008. A few years ago, there was a lot of discussion in the kind of hipster press about hipster racism. And I was like, I read some of this stuff and I was like, some people, anytime there's a group of majority white people, someone's going to say it's racist. And I was like, yeah. But then I learned about Gavin McInnes and I was like, I think I'm going to eat some of my words here. So I was like, they're really, one of the founders of the kind of hipster sensibility is, I believe, is a white nationalist. And I believe you can see that in some of the approach, especially with Vice, especially the older, if you look at the older stuff, it's become this corporate thing now. But he's deeply misogynistic. He's transphobic, he's Islamophobic, and instead of saying he's a white nationalist, he calls himself a Western chauvinist. He said statements like, I love being white. So if a Klan leader used this same language, if David Duke said these same things, I think we'd all immediately understand this was just some thinly veiled white supremacist talk. But for some reason, McGinnis gets a pass, and this flabbergasts me. Maybe I'm just not adjusted to 2017 yet. And he retains his ability to get on mainstream platforms like Fox News. He's contributed to white nationalist publications like American Renaissance and VDare. He has white nationalist leaders on his show. In December 2016, he called on his followers to attack a queer metal show at the St. Vitus Club in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, after falsely accusing the band of doxing his followers. The Proud Boys, his gang, have been meeting at Tommy's Tavern nearby, although they've apparently moved on. This kind of hurts me because I used to do the door at indie rock shows at Tommy's. So. And the Proud Boys are an explicitly violent organization. Part of advancing rank in the group requires the members to fight with their political opponents. In February of this year, Gavin McGinnis spoke at NYU. It was the day after, I believe, a day or two after the disruptions in Berkeley, where people prevented Milo Yiannopoulos from speaking, so people here were really amped up. There were rowdy protests, and scuffles broke out with his group, the Proud Boys, who had come there to fight. McGinnis himself was maced outside, and his talk was eventually stopped after their students were disrupting it, and he told that there was a dean there who was insisting that he go on and speak, and finally he told the dean that he was a dumb liberal asshole and a beta male cuck, and apparently this was why his talk got pulled. Not because he said, I know that the person who maced me wasn't a Muslim because they didn't throw acid in my face. That is clearly, you can say that at NYU, but don't call the dean a beta male cuck. McGinnis says that neo-Nazis can't be Proud Boys, but if you look at the dialogue from the Nazis themselves, they say they have really good relationships with the rank and file members, and they look forward to them joining their movement in the future. So it's basically a group of people who want to be white nationalists, but either they're not white enough, or they just can't openly admit that they're racists. His group here in New York includes a guy named Sal Cipolla. He's been arrested many times, including for assaulting media people at the NYU demonstration, for attacking an underage person at a Boston alt-right rally, and recently for disrupting Shakespeare in the Park's Julius Caesar performance. He also went to a women's march here in New York to go and harass the participants. So I want everyone to think, this is what Western chauvinism really means, disrupting Shakespeare plays. So there's other people in the New York alt-right crowd, a number of whom are people of color. One of the main ones is Giovanni Valle, or Valle, I don't know how he says it. On Facebook, he goes by the name Jovi Val, and he organizes under the name the Modern Patriots. He seems to bring out these 4chan guys who come with this green Nazi-like Kekistan flag. He's organized some of the Trump marches here, and he organized the May Day disruption at the May Day rally, where alt-right activists and national anarchists came to Union Square, started fights, tried to disrupt the speakers, set off flares, and then attempted to videotape a masked march coming out of the square. They were later joined by Rock Against Communism skinheads, neo-Nazis from Vanguard America, and 3%ers, this decentralized paramilitary. Jovi Val, he was also arrested along with Cipolla for disrupting a Shakespeare play. We have a woman here named Brittany Deer, aka Brittany Ventney. She's the one who disrupted the May Day talk and was arrested for doing that. Martina Marcota is a Proud Girl. She's with the Proud Boys crowd, and she's the one who attempted to record the participants at the May Day march. And then Laura Loomer, works for Rebel Media and lives in Westchester, was arrested for the first of the 2 nights of disruptions of Julius Caesar. So these marches to me are something I call, that have happened since February really, what I call the independent Trumpist movement. And in this you see neo-Nazis, alt-right and alt-right activists, patriot movement paramilitaries, and regular Republican Trumpists all working together. And this is something that I've never seen before. You don't usually see it, because usually these groups won't work together. Usually there's a taboo against the white power people working with the Republicans. So I call this independent Trumpism. These rallies have been, supposed free speech rallies are the most popular, but these are really just ultra-nationalist events. There's Islamophobic rallies, like we saw here in New York, and there are rallies to keep Confederate memorials that mostly happen in the South. Largely this stuff is organized outside of the Republican Party, and it is Islamophobia and opposition to anti-fascists that make up the glue which hold these different factions together, as well as their mutual love for Trump. So there were some conflicts that came out of this last round of demonstrations on June 10th between these factions. But here in New York, we saw Nazis, Patriot Movement groups, Proud Boys, and even right-wing Zionists who all seemed quite happy to work with each other. So I'll talk about some of the very specific stuff happening here in New York City's radical right. New York has a really weird far right. Most of the active groups here are these unorthodox fascist groups or they're expatriate groups. And now, in the last 6 to 8 months, we've seen an explosion of alt-right groups, as well as for the first time these right-wing paramilitaries being on the streets, although they've been here. So we have expat fascists here. People from all over the world come to New York, and they bring their home country politics with them. And this includes far-right organizers who organize expat branches of their party here. So Golden Dawn, the Greek neo-Nazi group, has a Greek neo-Nazi party has a group up in Astoria. And they were very active in the past. They're not so active now, but they still are. And there's a branch of the Right Sector Party from Ukraine that's here. Also, at the Hungarian House on the Upper East Side, they've had a number of far-right presentations. One of my friends is a Magyar speaker, and he's always sending me emails. He's like, can't believe this is happening at the Hungarian House. I'm like, please translate it for me. My Magyar is not very good. So we have a really big, this is a very complicated and difficult group to describe. It's really not known to anybody if you're not in the punk and skinhead scene, and it's a big thing here in New York. It's the Rock Against Communism skinheads. So it's been here for quite a while. And this name started in the 1980s when Nazi skinhead bands like Screwdriver started using it to sort of fly under the radar. Here, there's two groups. One of them is called the 211 Boot Boys. And there's a half a dozen or more bands that are affiliated with this scene. They also have a long history of being involved in a supporters club, in the Empire State Ultras, who are a supporters club for the NYCFC soccer team. The presence in the supporters club has been one of the main reasons that there are anti-fascist groups that have formed in all three of the New York metro area professional soccer team supporters clubs to deal with these people. Now, they're called, we call them RAC, Rock Against Communism. So the RAC skins are special because they play the old Nazi skinhead songs, they wear Nazi skinhead band t-shirts, they'll sing a Heil at the concerts, and they'll hang out with members of Nazi skinhead gangs. But the catch is that they're a multiracial movement. Many of the members are Latino. Some are often said to be members of neo-Nazi parties in Latin America who've emigrated to New York and taken their politics with them. And it's absolutely true that there are neo-Nazi groups throughout Latin America and in Asia now. Their presence, in fact, has split the New York Latino punk scene into two factions, into an anti-fascist and a pro-RAC faction. And part of this group, there's a number of Polish immigrants and Polish speakers, probably a mix of both, here as well. So I see the RAC scene, it's very hard to try to classify it as a far-right movement with open pro-Nazi sympathies, mixed in, sprinkled in with a number of real full-on Nazis. Sometimes we call them the full fash, or the half fash and the full fash. So some notable events that have occurred in town. On Hitler's birthday, in April 2013, at the Katyn Memorial in Jersey City, there was a large rally of Polish fascists, along with some Pennsylvania Nazi skinheads. In August of 2015, there was a big fight in New Jersey with Red Bull supporters. This made the local press as well as the professional soccer press. If you follow soccer stuff, the headlines are all, is the European hooliganism coming to America? A lot of it is about that fight. There have been controversies over RAC bands playing at the Greenpoint Bar Coco 66 in 2014, and with their Oi Fest in 2015 and 2016. These controversies made the local press and made the music press as far away as Great Britain. What people assume to be the Polish members have been stickering heavily in Greenpoint this year. There was a discussion about all their stickers on a North Brooklyn Facebook group that I'm in. And people were like, why are these white power stickers in our community? And I was like, well, actually, maybe we can talk about this. And their violence, there's a lot of violence associated with this movement, and it has attracted the attention of law enforcement. In January, Andrew Kolkus was arrested with a weapons catch on Long Island. I think he had 4 automatic weapons. And so in February, these people were going to hold a benefit for him, and the night before, some of the members attacked 2 Ivy League grad students at the Clockwork Bar in the Lower East Side. They attacked them with brass knuckles and knives. One of the people, one of the Raskins from DC, named John Young, was arrested and received a gang assault charge. It's rumored that the New York Gang Squad is now involved in tracking this group. NYPD's Hate Crimes Task looked into the attack. And so now both Kolkus and Young are awaiting trials. This attack also made Gavin McInnes make contact with this crowd. He expressed support for them and he even doxed the victims of the attack. So, and these people are coming to the Trump rallies here as well as in Washington, D.C. So, in addition to all this stuff, we have Patriot Movement paramilitary groups. They say they're not white supremacists. They're multiracial. The movement is best known for forming militias, and they did a bunch of armed takeovers in the West. There was the Bundy Ranch standoff with the government and the takeover of the Ultra-National Wildlife Refuge in Oregon last year. The groups have been in New York for a while, but they kept it pretty under the radar. Two of them are here, the Oath Keepers. They're a group of current and former military, law enforcement, and first responders who believe a variety of crank right-wing conspiracy theories and say they're not going to, like, when the government comes to take everybody's guns and stick everyone in concentration camps so the UN can invade, they're not going to help them do that. It's like, okay, guys, don't, help that thing, that's not going to happen. But what they've done across the country is they've been doing security for these independent Trumpist demos. So they are, in practice, acting as security guards for Nazis. The vice president of the state New York Oath Keepers, Frank Morgenthaler, spoke at Foley Square. There were a bunch of Oath Keepers there. Morgenthaler was the guy who had a heart attack during the rally. We also have 3 percenters here. They're a more decentralized, more extreme group in the Patriot Movement. They were also at the May Day rally and at the Foley Square rally. We have Islamophobic groups. There's at least 7 of them, maybe more. And it's also worth a mention that State Assemblyman Doug Heikind, who's a right-wing Zionist, spoke at the anti-Linda Sarsour demonstration, along with, I believe, Pamela Geller, Milo Yiannopoulos, and Gavin McInnes, and some others. So this created a spectacle you don't see all the time, but you do see at Islamophobic demonstrations where right-wing Zionists and Holocaust deniers take the streets together on the same side. So last, there's a separate but overlapping question of the anti-Semites appearing here in left-wing spaces. 6 anti-Semitic speakers have appeared at 3 different left-leaning venues in the last year here in New York City, at Theater 80, at Brooklyn Commons, and at the Left Forum Conference. This is a longer question and something to the side of the talk, but their presence, the anti-Semites like this will create a bridge between left-wing and right-wing movements, and you'll see some of the same people going to these Trump demonstrations, going to these presentations in left-wing groups with left-wing activists. So, to wrap things up, there's a lot of groups who are very active here in New York right now, but they're a tiny minority of the population. I think that there is not enough resistance to them, and ignoring them will not make them go away. But we need to name and shame their organizers, their bookers, and their collaborators, even if these collaborators are people in our own community. We need to pressure businesses who make a profit off of hosting these people, whether these are bars, music venues, or places to speak. We need to understand who the rally organizers are, and which of these organizers have the capacity to bring out-of-towners here. We need to create photo documentation of the members so that when they attack people, the victims can identify the perpetrators. And this has already been an issue on a number of different occasions, especially after the rallies. And there needs to be stickering and flyer campaigns in neighborhoods where they spread their propaganda, like in Bushwick and Greenpoint. We need to be prepared if they try to come to our marches and harass and attack participants. This has already happened. And we need to put pressure on these groups so that they know very vocally that they're not welcome in New York City. At the Foley Square rally on June 10th, there was a noise demonstration, which was an attempt to drown them out. So it was a non-confrontational way to actually be more invasive, perhaps. And I liked it. It was great. There were about 300 people there. But what would have been better is that we had 1,000 people there, and we were able to surround them. The sides were sort of facing each other. If we were able to surround them on all sides and really drown them out, I think that would have been much better. And that's what happened in Portland, Oregon. After the murders of these 2 people who had stopped an Islamophobic attack, there was a rally, one of these independent Trumpist rallies of keepers and Christian right people and neo-Nazis. And the people in Portland were furious. They were still holding this rally, and they literally surrounded them. So the rally was in a park on the park blocks, and people literally surrounded them on all sides. And I think that really made them know that they were not welcome in Portland. And we need to make these people know that they're not welcome here in New York. There are 8 million people in New York. We should easily be able to get 1,000 people on the streets to oppose these people. And so I think this is the next big public organizing step that needs to happen to address the more visible street presence of the far right here in New York City. That's it. Thank you. We're going to take questions in a second. I have to read this audience statement. I'd like to thank Political Research Associates for sponsoring this talk, and I urge everybody here to visit politicalresearch.org to learn more and sign up for the newsletter. I am going to pass a hat for myself. I am not a staff member at PRA. I have to fund my own research. I'm doing some projects to do create YouTube videos to create counter messaging to far-right talking points, and I want to do a project about the memorialization of people who have been killed by the far right. Over 440 people, 420, well over 400 people have been killed by the far right since 1990. I want to do a project about who this actually is and what, do some sort of memorialization for the victims. So I'm just going to pass this around.
So I want to invite questions and remind you that you are not on camera, and so Spencer will repeat your question, and I am here to help facilitate the Q&A. So I see some hands already.
Yeah, thank you for your talk. Thank you for inviting my organization, Freedom Socialist Party. We were there and helped organize the 10th, and I think I agree with your analysis. It was not nearly enough people, and like at one point I felt like our numbers were the same, and one thing that I think has changed is, I've been protesting Nazis on the West Coast for like 15 years, and in New York now. I didn't think I would do it here, but and one of the things is their presence has really changed. Like, they used to just kind of have these free speech rallies, kind of Zeke Heil, and then we'd run them out of town, but they're much more violent and aggressive than they have been. And so our tactics need to escalate, and especially we know that their intended victims are often like some of the most vulnerable. Like, if there was a Muslim woman in a wheelchair, they'd go after her, Like, they don't really, it's not like macho for them. So anyway, my question is, well, first I want to put in a plug for people to join No Platform for Fascism, which is a new alliance that's starting, which I think is super important for us to join in the left to work together. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about was, the group's relationship to the state, because I think you had a great outline of all these different groups and their kind of qualities and features. But to me, when it comes down to it, the government, the state, the police, Trump, that relationship is getting closer. And in the end, when it comes to fascism, they'll be happy to watch these groups attack the left. So if you have any thoughts on that, I'd like to hear it.
So the question is, I'm just repeating it for the recording, of what is the relationship of these groups to the state? So I had some of this, I cut it out. It's really interesting. If you look at Trump's appointees most of them are from Islamophobic groups, who have documented political ties. They're from Islamophobic groups, anti-immigrant groups, anti-LGBT groups, and of course uber-capitalist and anti-environmental groups. There's only 2 people who have ties to white nationalist groups. It's Steve Bannon, who said Breitbart was one of the platform for the alt-right, and then Sebastian Gorka, who's a Hungarian immigrant, who's tied, who at one point endorsed or was part of, I forget, being a paramilitary, fascist paramilitary there that was banned. So I just say that to say that these groups are actually not part of the direct political networks that the Trump administration is relying on for appointees. They are definitely taking advantage of the climate. They love Trump. And the real problem, I think, is with the police. And the police are, I think, pretty clear. I think in our ideal, I know many people probably want to abolish the police, but short of that the police actually be a neutral actor and treat everybody the same way from different political factions, right? Like, short of some, real reform, that's what people hope for. And that's clearly not what's happening. The police, at various times in various demonstrations, are harder against the left and softer with the right. They don't arrest people on the right when there's a fight. They arrest people very quickly on the left. One of the things that I heard was that the second big clash, or the third thing in Berkeley, that was sort of on April 15th, I think that was the big turning point for the right, is that the police stopped anti-fascists they were going to come to the park first and occupy it beforehand. This is a way to stop a rally. And the police stopped that from happening, but when the right-wing group marched out into the streets, into the middle of Berkeley, illegally the police just let it go. And as fights went on, and when the right had the upper hand, the police just let it go. So, in a very micro level, I think that's the problem, is that the state is going to act favorably towards them and unfavorably towards us. In a bigger picture, they already are acting. I think people get it wrong when they think these groups are somehow the puppets of the state now. Like, I don't think they're really being controlled secretly, by the Republicans or something, but I think many Republicans, the Trumpists, are very happy to see them, and it's even better for them that there's not so many direct connections, because then there's deniability, right? Then they don't have to be like, oh, like, you see the links and here's the money. Like, all these people wanted to see money between Alec and the Bundy, the takeover in Oregon. I was like, look, they don't need, it's better for them not to be a direct link. Alec and all these other groups, really American Lands Council, these land reform groups set the agenda, and these people enforce it, but they can pretend they have nothing to do with each other, even when they're already clearly working the same way. So that's how I think it's working now. There's a real danger that these groups are driving the temperature on the right, for the right, and being more aggressive. If you read some of the right-wing press, it's absolutely insane. They manufactured, there was just Pamela Geller put up this story claiming there was this obviously fake anti-fascist flyer from an obviously fake group, and claiming this was real, and anti-fascists are going around and knifing Trump supporters. This is like, they say this all the time, and they're whipping their supporters up into a frenzy, who are going on their Facebook groups and saying, I got my 45 and I'm ready to take them out. So I think this is the dynamic of how it's working. Yeah, I mean, and these people do target, they will target people individually, it's a problem. They do often target anti-fascists as well. A lot of the people who are killed, it's like, people, like, they will pick off and kill random people of color and other oppressed people. They also really like to kill people who stand up to them. So it's actually much more of a mixture in that. But, so the two people killed in Portland were not the Muslim women who had been harassed. It was two white men who were going to be.
Lots and lots of hands. I'm going to start in the back and come around. So you're the sort of person in the news hat, and then I see you with the risk guard. You'll be next.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask, of the groups which you outlined at the beginning of your talk, the different factions and bodies that are coming together to make this new right, which do you see as growing the quickest over the coming decade? Where do you see the largest source of growth?
Well, the question was which factions are growing the quickest and over the next decade. Really hard to see in the crystal ball. The rising tide is bringing all the boats up. Clearly, alt-right is a new thing. It's the most dangerous because the older stuff had been kind of set in its format, and you have to recreate social movements and political movements every few decades, or it just sounds like old. And I mean, I remember in the 80s when I started reading left-wing stuff, I was like, these people just sound like a bunch of old people, like my grandparents or something. So, so they recreated, so the most dangerous because they recreated the whole look and feel, and that can really go for quite a while. It's hard to tell, a lot of this is, even if they say they're disappointed with Trump, the more aggressive right-wing ones say, well, maybe they're happier with the Muslim ban now, they're like, where's our wall? We voted for you, we want the wall. They will rise and fall with Trump, I think. This is kind of what happened with the Nazi and Klan people with Reagan and then Bush. Like the harder right people do better with a harder right president. I think that in the United States, I think the left is the same. The radical left does better with the liberal president. The softer right does better with the liberal president sometimes. So it's some funny dynamics. So I'm not quite sure. Clearly the alt-right is the most dangerous because it's a whole new presentation, and that's an important thing. And we'll see the growth. I mean, it's in full swing. It's not declining. Is it growing? I'm not sure. It might be level. It might be growing. I think it's certainly got legs for a number of years. Certainly through the end of the Trump administration, at the very least.
My question was about what are some good talking points for reaching out to people who may be on the left but may tend more towards liberalism or stuff like that? Because sometimes when I've brought stuff up, like, hey, there's this noise demo happening, the response I've gotten from people is, oh, well, if you go there and actually pay attention to them, it's giving them attention, you're giving them power. If you just ignore them, they'll go away. And I mean, I've already tried, like, hey, my family tried to ignore the fascists in Germany, and now they're here.
So the question is, what are good talking points for liberals who think if we ignore them, they'll go away?
I find it helpful to say that my friend who's a PhD who studies this says that's not true.
Tell them it is not true. If you ignore them, silence is consent. I grew up in a small town in Georgia, and I got to witness firsthand the Nazi skinhead movement and the Klan revival in the 80s and 90s. And they loved it when there was no opposition. They loved it because it meant that they could go ahead. We found this out in Oregon. I was doing some anti-militia advising to a community-based group there called the Rural Organizing Project before the Malheur takeover, and then that blew it up. We were already so concerned about how much militia organizing there was. And they turned me on to a speaker. It was actually some old video from the 90s, an Aryan Nations speaker who had flipped sides and was giving talks about how they recruited. And he was like, so one of the things we did is when we went to a town, we passed flyers out, and then if there was no opposition, then we moved into the town. So, because if there was opposition, it wasn't worth it. And so when there is no opposition, then people move forward. They are in full swing and they're moving very quickly. And if you don't try to put a block on them, that means that they're going to kind of keep going through it. And I think this needs to be stressed to liberals, and as well as the fact that things like noise demonstrations, if people have concerns about free speech, this is a completely legal, completely nonviolent way that actually does have a level of intervention with these things. And if they want to close their eyes to these movements, aren't going to make them go away. And that's a really foolish. The organizers love it, and I think the organizers love it when the people say, "Yeah, we're not going to do anything," because they're like, "Great, it's easier for us to organize." I mean, that's what I would think if I was organizing. I'd be like, "I hate it if there was opposition." I'm like, "Oh, cool, no opposition in this town. Let's like set up our meetings and do our home visits or whatever."
Less of a question about a movement, but more from just the intellectual discourse perspective. You mentioned anti-LGBT philosophies, and where do you place the sort of trans-exclusionary radical feminists in this whole landscape?
Well, I think that they're... Oh, sorry, I'm terrible at this. Where are TERFs? Where are trans-exclusionary radical feminists in the spectrum? My understanding of them, there are people on the left who have quirky right-wing ideas embedded in them. You will sometimes see this with people who are otherwise solid left-wingers who then have a weird anti-Semitic tick. But otherwise, it's the whole platform. So I kind of see TERFs this way. They just have they have a tick about trans folks. I think it unfortunately flows directly out of this sort of Dworkinite essentialist feminism that was popular in the 80s and 90s, and then if they kind of kept going with that strain of thought that I was sympathetic to at the time, I thought it was interesting. I like the really countercultural element of it, although I was anti-essentialist. But I think that they just like, there was something about them, I don't know what drives, some of them are just really mean. I could have an argument with them if they weren't just such mean-spirited people. I mean, it's not just like, oh, well, I think there's an essential genders and whatever, blah, 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 some essential thing, and so, they're just like, they really act terribly. So I think that there are, generally people on the left with a real tick, but that's not uncommon to happen. You'll see this in, you don't really see it in the U.S., but maybe you see it in liberals who are otherwise solidly liberal and then they're really Islamophobic. So I think of it in the same way.
Is there a relationship between the alt-right and the Christian right?
Or is there a relationship between the alt-right and the Christian right? In Portland, there are these very aggressive street preachers. I actually was there when they came and disrupted a demonstration, and they were, the guy, Jeremy Christian, had gone to some of the rallies. Generally, no, I don't think so. Maybe the more Catholic traditionalist sides are probably more closely tied to some of the more esoteric fascist elements who are all involved in perennialism and traditionalism. But generally, no, I think they don't like, there's something really stodgy about the American Christian right, and the alt-right is so against that it doesn't seem to flow together so much. I haven't seen it. And they all do support Trump, and they're always in the same bed together. But
Go ahead.
So one thing I've seen somewhat recently is this upgrowth of what is called anarcho-fascism, which posits, it's kind of come out of anarcho-capitalism, that posits that we need a fascist state to basically wipe out communists and Muslims and various other people so that we can then have a truly free market anarchist society.
Some Bay Area shit, isn't it?
I was just wondering if there was any, if you've seen this in real life, or this has only kind of been an internet thing, whether it seems like it's more of an interest thing than genuine.
So the question is anarcho-fascism different than Jack Donovan's anarcho-fascism?
Yes.
Okay, anarcho-fascism as an outgrowth of anarcho-capitalism off the internet, this being the argument we need a totalitarian state to wipe out the left and the Muslims. I think it's still an internet thing, but we're seeing in the streets the internet come to life. I mean, I think it's the same group of people who are doing all these like anti-communist action flags that are a ripoff of the Antifa flags with people being thrown out of helicopters. So, all this crazy stuff that people are like, that's just weird internet stuff. We're all seeing it like come to life. It's really like cartoons coming to life lately. So, no, but probably soon. Probably soon.
I have seen some people, especially in the metal scene, in online gaming, or very serious competitive video game scenes, people I know who are previously right games sort of tip into basically fascists and start posting pictures of Nazis and stuff like that. But with the logos blurred out, which is just like the costumes or something. It's a very odd thing, but I'm seeing a lot. Have you seen any successful interventions against this kind of thing?
So the question is, there's a lot of, in online gaming and other online forums, there's like Nazi fetishism? Is this, and then are people going over into fascist politics?
These are people who are at the intersection of gaming and heavy metal music.
Okay, so I'm just repeating. So it's people at the intersection of gaming and heavy metal. I'm not in those circles. I know it's a huge problem. Of course, a lot of the alt-right, the troll side of the alt-right came out of people coming from Gamergate, so Milo Yiannopoulos. There needs to be interventions. Somebody involved in that stuff is going to have to craft them. This is one of the areas where people do need to intervene. It seems like you hear these stories that like these online games are just being flooded with Nazi propaganda. And then there's this whole, called Nazi chic sometimes, where people aren't actually into Nazi politics, but they like the uniforms and stuff, and this can be a gateway. I mean, or it also creates a warm and welcoming environment for people to develop an unhealthy interest in the actual politics.
In 2012 in southern Brooklyn, there was a special election in which for a short time a state senate seat got held by a gentleman who ran a website called Global Politician, which he wiped from the internet during the campaign, which served as a forum for apartheid separatist groups and Afrikaner separatist groups in South Africa, and Fiordis and Minutemen stuff. and things like that. And he ran a campaign and had a philosophy, if you went through his columns, that was like weirdly predictive in its weird combination of stuff of the Trump movement. And he served in the state Senate for a short time. And I was wondering if you detected much crossover into mainstream Republican politics by people on the alt-right or white nationalists affiliated people in New York, or see the potential of it, it's particularly in this case in the Russian community.
You're asking specifically about New York?
I'm asking about New York, but elsewhere too, if you know of it, because this was an example. At the time, I didn't know what it was. I was blogging about it on Room 8, and the guy seemed to be pretty close to a crypto-fascist, and he was a vice chair of the Brooklyn Republican Party, which is an honorific title. It's not a real power title, but still, right? I wonder if you see more connections like this.
All right, let me see if I can repeat this. So there was, in 2012, somebody briefly held a state Senate seat in a Republican in Southern Brooklyn who had run a website that had white nationalists and other like right-wing, pretty far-right material. And do I see influence in the New York City Republican Party of this?
Yeah. Do you see instances? Do you see collaboration? Do you speak with
I'm sure you follow party politics much more closely than I do. So I don't know anything. I can't point to anything here in the city. Clearly, this must be happening across the country. The big right-wing media sources are being affected by even the further right stuff. There was a totally fake story that appeared in some alt-right blog called Heat Street that then was repeated almost word for word on Fox News. So all this stuff is generating on the margins and but right now flowing directly into the mainstream Trumpist part of the Republican Party. So I'm sure there will be more of it. I don't know of anything specifically here in the city. In Portland, Oregon, I'll point out that the Multnomah County, it's the county Portland's in, Republican Party chair said that he wanted the Oath Keepers and 3%ers to be the security guards for the Republican Party. So that's definitely stuff coming into alignment that shouldn't be into alignment. The Republican Party should not be hiring private paramilitaries to guard its events.
You in the striped shirt, and then you in the pink.
Can you address more about the reason why people of color want to participate in the independent Trumpist campaign? And especially I'm thinking about the impact of language, because even before or after the election, Trump has been humiliated or embarrassed by the languages that he has been using, like the bigly or some good speaking word. But however, as the ESL learner and immigrant, I think the linguistic politics is also another way to make the separation and distinction between so-called Native Americans and also the immigrants. So whenever more embarrassment or the humiliation that the liberals or the radicals throw over the head of Trump is also the way to push those immigrants or the people of color voters away. So I'm not sure, based on your research, how and why those people of color want to join the pro-Trump campaign, and what is the impact of language?
So the question is, why are people of color joining the Trump-style politics? And is there something going on here that's distinguishing between the native English speakers and immigrant people who speak English as a second language between the groups? So 86% of the people who voted for Trump were white, meaning 14% of this support is not. 8% of black voters voted for Trump, and depending on your analysis, 20 to 30% of Latinos voted for Trump. There is a far right. So for sure, some of the black voters. It's also interesting that there's a really heavy skew between men and women. I think it was only 2% of black women voted for Trump. I think that many of the people who voted for Trump are Christian conservatives, and I think the single issue voters around abortion are going to go with Trump. But there hasn't been any work that I've seen about these groups. There is people on the left sometimes have a really mistaken idea that people of color are sort of automatically on the left or liberals. And there really are, and there always have been, a lot of very conservative people of color in the United States. There are different kinds of far-right groups that are just short of white supremacy that welcome people of color, and they've always had members like the LaRouchites and like the John Birch Society. And you even see POC leaders in the Patriot movement who even did in the 1990s in the militia movement when there were still more open white supremacist Christian identity organizers in it. You even see people of color trying to join open white supremacist movements in the United States. So to what extent are they doing this sort of classic immigrant thing of, if you're talking about immigrants who want to separate themselves, like they're the good people who have assimilated from others? I don't know. There must be some of that going on in some communities. Some of this stuff is very strange, though, where you have like Polish and Greek immigrants belonging to political parties that in their home countries are anti-immigrant when they're immigrants here, and they're doing that propaganda here in the country they've immigrated to. This is actually a very strong thing in Britain, where there's all these Polish fascists who are immigrants who are joining these anti-immigrant British white nationalists. I don't get it. I'm gonna admit, I just don't get it. I don't understand what's going on, other than to say that there is a strain of far-right politics within people of color movements in the United States. And then there's a separate strain, this isn't the Trump stuff, of pan-secessionists, where people who are black nationalists or native radicals and they want a total isolated geographical separatism will make alliances with white nationalists. There's a whole legacy of this going back to the 1920s. There's meetings between the Garveyites and Senator Bilbo, who said he wanted to throw some of the black people back to Africa. And the Garveyites were like, "Oh, that's a great idea. We want to go. Are you going to give us money?" And more recently, meetings between like Tom Metzger and the Nation of Islam and stuff. So there's also, that's a bit of a separate question about the pan-secessionists, where you get racial separatists of different kinds come together.
Yeah. We've talked, of course, about the kind of anti-fascist organizing that happens in the streets, but do you have a sense, particularly locally in New York City, of kind of anti-racist organizing in spaces where maybe people are conservative, like all of the neighborhoods in New York that are traditionally conservative, but maybe not fascist and white supremacist, so like organizing going on within churches or neighborhood associations or these kind of, high schools, these kinds of spaces where people live.
So the question is there more anti-racist as opposed to anti-fascist organizing going on in conservative?
Or anti-fascist, but just,
not conservative neighborhood groups here in New York. There's anti-racist stuff, and I'm sure there's a bunch of anti-Islamophobic groups. I think there's a Bay Ridge. Is there a Bay Ridge group? I don't know a lot about it. It's not, the groups that I know of or I've seen are not really focused on these other organized political movements. They're maybe more responding to something like a mosque gets fucked with, and so people in that neighborhood are responding, and that's good. I guess I'm trying to, the more anti-racist versus anti-fascist groups have not been very active anywhere in the country in responding to this upsurge. And in New York, it's particularly difficult because I don't think a lot of this stuff is really neighborhood-based. Like these activists, I think they just live wherever, and a lot of them are more like many of them are typical white people who move to New York and work in culture industry or some kind of stuff. Some of them are native New Yorkers, but and then people just live all over town. I don't think that it's a little hard to do counter-organizing because it's not so geographically specific. I think sometimes people think like, it's the old days, like, oh, Bensonhurst, and they're all organizing out of there, and it doesn't really look like that so much. So, there's not so much, other than I think counter-Islamophobic stuff, there's not so much of that I know of. And it would be difficult to do it because it's not quite the problem either. It creates a real thing. If they're not centered anywhere, how do you do the counter work if they're just on the internet? Other than you being on the internet all the time, or I think we're all probably on the internet all the time already. So.
And then behind you, go ahead, and you'll be next.
So lately I've seen a lot of fighting between the alt-right and alt-right. Like they had two separate
question is that there's been a lot of infighting lately between the alt-right and alt-right factions. In Houston at a June 10th rally, some alleged oath keepers choked in a Nazi there in Identity Europa. This caused a big online fight between Patriot Movement people and the racist alt-right people. And then last weekend there was 2 separate rallies in DC where Richard Spencer was rallying with some open white supremacists, and some of the alt-right people didn't want to work with him, so they ended up having their own separate rally. So we don't know. One of the problems is that there's been people have been predicting the collapse of the alt-right because of some fight or some separation since the fall, and it hasn't happened. I will point out that in Houston, the Oath Keepers leader said that guy, the Oath Keeper who choked out the racist, was not part of his group. And so there wasn't even an acceptance of this. Stuart Rhodes, the leader of the Oath Keepers, keeps saying he's not a white nationalist, he doesn't like them, but he has no problem rallying with them and having his people defend them. So it's a bunch of words. Here in New York, there was a lot of talk about that split, but if you saw it here in New York, there was a big group of Identity Europa people handing out literature inside of Foley Square with all the Oath Keepers and everybody else around them, and they were all getting along hunky-dory. So there's no sign of that split here in New York. There is signs of it elsewhere, but it's really like a kind of the sky is falling, a Chicken Little thing, where I've heard this so many times at this point that I just, they always are arguing with each other all the time. It's a very fractious movement, but it's not so easy to separate the really openly racist versions from the non-racist ones, because the non-racist people will say things like, there is no racism and white genocide. They'll talk about white genocide. These are the people who say they're not racist and they're using all these crazy stuff, or memes of other people. The woman Laura Loomer who disrupted Shakespeare in the Park, Baked Alaska, who had made anti-Semitic statements in the past and said he apologized, put a picture of her in a gas chamber. So they're fighting with each other, but they just all fight with each other, so it's hard to know if it's serious or not. Sorry, my answer to everything is I don't know.
Go ahead. I'm from Staten Island, and the most visible right-wing, not entirely mainstream group that we've seen is they call themselves Blue Lives Matter, and they've been putting up blue ribbons on people's property, and people have taken them down and received death threats in response to them. But it happens, when they speak publicly, they kind of try to temper it that, we're just all about respect for the police officers. But, when you go to their events, it's this weird mix of these mainstream Republicans with also some people who are actually oath keepers, our local people. Is that kind of the same thing around the city? Are you finding the oath keepers and the alt-right also pushing for respect for the cops?
Oh yeah. So the question here is that on Staten Island there's a lot of Blue Lives Matter people who are working with Oath Keepers, and they're threatening if people take their Blue Lives Matter ribbons down, they get threatened. And what's the are they working with what's their alt-right's view of the cops? So this is something I cut out of the talk, so you all didn't have to sit and hear me ramble on and on, because I can talk about this subject forever. In the past, the white nationalist movement, it was pro-federal government until the civil rights movement, when, because the civil rights laws became enacted on the federal level, it turned into an anti-federal government movement, and now it's changing back. And one reason it's changing back is, of course, Trump, because Trump's the head of the federal government. And the other is their response to the Black Lives Matter movement, because, of course, they hate it. And so they're in a very pro-police mode, which is sometimes a new thing, especially for Nazis. They'd often get in, sovereign citizens would get in shootouts with the police. So now there's been a realignment towards supporting the police. So yeah, in other cities this stuff blends. It's not just Oath Keepers and pro-police, sort of right-wing pro-police sentiment. It blends over into a larger group of people. It's one of the things that's helping unite them. The role of women. What's the question is, what's the role of women in these misogynistic movements? So the role of women is different in all these different sectors. This is a really funny thing. So in the neo-Nazi movement, as the 90s and 00s went on, they became a lot more, they had a kind of semi-feminism, and they really wanted to incorporate women into the movement and women with families. And there's a whole shtick about families. But they were really trying to build, you know, because in the old days when there was Nazi skinhead gangs, it was a bunch of young men who were really drunk, beating up and killing each other, and they were like, this isn't a very stable political movement. So they welcomed in women and people with families, and this created a lot more stability to the movement, which made it more dangerous too, because it wasn't so marginal, more and less dangerous. But so a funny thing happened with the rise of the alt-right, in which they actually became a lot more misogynistic than the Nazis, to the point that on one of the main alt-right blogs, I can't remember which one, so I'm going to say it. Women are not allowed to publish on it. It was the misogynistic Gamergate culture that really created the rocket fuel for this existing alt-right intellectual kind of thing around Richard Spencer. I mean, Richard Spencer can't be. I mean, he's not like a clever or whatever. If these people are clever, right? It's not his thing. So this has really fueled it, but the weird thing is we're seeing in the alt-right now, because really there are very few women, there were a few, we're seeing more alt-right women who are especially these live broadcasters, Laura Southern and Laura Loomer and other people. And this is just in the last month or two. Women are invited in as long as they're anti-feminist. But they clearly feel like there's more room for participation, at least on the visible levels. I'm not really seeing them at the rallies. So there are some. There was Brittany Venti was the woman who disrupted the May Day rally. So there's a very limited number on the streets here in New York. There does seem to be an increasing number of public women in the alt-right. In Philadelphia, there was one, Emily Yukis, who lost her job for being a Nazi. She was also a peanut seller at sports games. People knew her. What? Pistachio, I'm sorry. I stand corrected, a pistachio seller. She was sort of known like in the sports community, and they lost her job for being a Nazi. Boo-hoo.
So it's sister in the back, and then you.
Hi. I didn't realize you did this for free. You should get paid.
We should say PRA does pay you for your much of your research.
PRA does pay me when I write articles for them. I get some money, but I'm not a staff. I don't get a staff wage.
More broadly speaking, I think a lot of people to New York Council. So many big donors in the room. I wanted to ask you about one of my pet groups, and they seem to be like the New York City fan club of Metropolis. There's a guy named Chadwick Moore who publishes in a couple of mainstream outlets, and he reported about 200 people at their coming out conservative pride party last week. I know that a lot more women are comfortable organizing with them. Just wondering if you think that they're worth keeping an eye on, or if they're just being frivolous.
So the question is about an alt-right gay man, yes, named Chadwick Moore, who just organized a 200-person event the other week. I don't know about, is this 4chan, Chad?
I don't know.
There's so many of these people, I will admit, like I have a limited, some people are really into every like alt-right thing, and I don't follow all the ins and outs of it so closely, despite the fact that I try to pretend that I do. So I don't know, you should create documentation about this group and circulate it in progressive circles so people can pay attention to it. I encourage everybody to do that. If you see a group organizing in your community, to create documentation about it, create it in a way that has details but is readable to people, and put it online, and then make it known to people that it's there. I mean, if you stick something up, people got to know it's there. And so people, because what happens is something happens, you get, somebody attacks you at a bar and you're like, who were these people? And this has happened multiple times. Or there's a disruption at your event and you're like, who are these people? And if the documentation is there, you can go online and be like, oh, that's who did that. And if it's not, then you're just like, it's like somebody hit you on the street and walked away. So I encourage everyone to create documentation about all of these groups in accessible formats. So the question is, are there examples in Gamergate of nominally apolitical communities being activated into political, kind of more radical political action? There's different examples of this throughout history. Religious communities happens. This is a classic organizing strategy to try to find a kind of thing, especially where people already have some sense of community, and radicalize it. The skinhead movement was like this. It was really a rather apolitical movement until the 80s when the Nazis came in, and then they really like injected Nazi politics into it. In the sports scene, we're seeing it here where people are injecting politics. And it happens both on the left and right. Usually more radical wings of the left and right inject these things into movements. I can't think of anything else good recently, but yeah, I mean, this is a not uncommon. I mean, like, Christians, as Christians in the United States, were not, the Christian right only really arose in the United States in the 1970s. Like, it's a fear, before that, Protestants were fairly apolitical in the United States, or even left-leaning. You know, the Catholic Church, for example, was very, was a separate, but right, they were very Democrat leaning because they wanted social welfare for people. So, these things can happen quickly, and it's not always where you would think of. I'm sure there's better examples, but I can't think of them off the top of my head.
So I think I'm going to take moderator's prerogative and ask the last question,
All right.
which is, I'm still thinking about your question about what do you say to folks who might be liberal about
You don't want to repeat it? I'm still thinking about your question about kind of talking with folks who are perhaps less politically engaged or less radicalized than we might be in this room about the danger these pose. And I wonder if you would talk a little bit about your experience reading the media and postings of these folks about how they distinguish or don't distinguish between liberals and leftists. I'm thinking especially of the NRA video at the moment, but in general. And then we'll wrap up.
So these people look at us like a big black box as well. And everybody from anarchists to communists to Black Lives Matter to George Soros to Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party are all one thing to almost all of them. And even when they're actually doing organizing, they can't seem to distinguish between groups. It's really rather weird to watch it. Some of it's just an organizing strategy on the right, as Chip and Matthew point out in right-wing populism in America. Right-wing populist movements, one of the things they're based around is basing it on hostility to progressive social movements. And so they're possibly, it's hard to tell how self-conscious some of these actors are, especially these conspiracy theorists who are like, guys, you know the UN is not about to invade because you've been saying the same thing for 30 years that it's going to happen any moment, and it ain't happened. Is this just a financial scam? Is this just an organizing strategy? You can't really believe this at some point. So, but they use it, self-consciously or not, they use it as an organizing tool to whip their people up into a frenzy because their politics are all about these emo politics. I love that ranting now. All these emo politics, it's not about, you know, on the left, Marxism is so strong because it's a rigorous analysis. You have a theory, you apply it, you make an argument. Maybe it's an ethical thing, but there's a sense of like a rigor and an analysis. They're not doing that. The right-wing populist playbook is how to, you have a goal, and the goal is to reinforce or expand existing hierarchies in a society. And then the technique, it looks like an analysis to us, but it's actually just a psychological and emotional technique to whip people up. And so they blend us all together, consciously or unconsciously, and they do it because it's an effective organizing tool for them.
On that note, I want to invite you again to join me in thanking Spencer. PRA has some materials for you, especially with some focus on the gender questions that came up in the Q&A. We also have Spencer's book about his experience in Oregon before and during the Malheur occupation, which is not to be missed. If you don't have a copy, you can find one over there. And of course, Spencer will answer all the questions you have as you come and talk to him. Thank you again so much for coming, and see you soon. And thank you, Good Verso people, for all of your help.